I'd like for us to turn to Matthew, the 24th chapter, Matthew, the 25th chapter, and beginning with the 14th verse. This is a passage that is very familiar to us, but has a lot of message to share with us. Matthew 25, beginning in verse 14. For it is just like a man about to go on a journey, who called his own slaves and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. And he went on his journey. Immediately the one who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them, and gained 5 more talents. In the same manner the one who had received the 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who received the 1 talent went away, and dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. To the one who had received the 5 talents, he came up and brought 5 more talents, saying, Master, you entrusted 5 talents to me. See, I have gained 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful in a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Also the one who had received the 2 talents came up and said, Master, you entrusted 2 talents to me. See, I have gained 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful in a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one also who had received the 1 talent came up and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid. And I went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. But his master answered and said to him, You wicked, lazy slave, you knew that I reap where I did not sow, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival I would have received my money back with interest. Therefore take away the talent from him, and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. Throw the worthless slave into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. A lot of times as we're studying this particular description, we'll focus on the 2 and the way that they put their talents to work, and we're able to gain more. This evening, let's stop for a moment and consider it from the perspective of the 1 talent man, and the way that even what he had, he lost. Now we understand that whether it be, money that we don't take and use it and try to put it in the bank or invest it in some way or another, we're going to wind up actually losing money because we have our daily expenses and everything. We know that we're going to wind up using it up and it's going to be gone. We need to do something so that we're going to be able to gain. But we also look at it from the perspective of the abilities that we have. We know that whether it be in nature or according to God's law, that there is an unchangeable fact. And it's very simple. If you don't use it, you lose it. Stop and think about a great singer or a great musician. If they don't continue to practicing their singing abilities or practice with the instrument that they have learned how to play, they're going to lose that talent. It will, if this is the way that they were making a living, but they haven't practiced, their ability to earn an income is gone. Alfred Russel Wallace, a great British scientist from the late 18th and early 19th century, late 1800s and early 1900s, made an observation as he went out into some deserted areas, and he saw where wheat had originally been planted and then was just left wild. There was no one out there tending it, no one trying to help to preserve it. The wheat, as it grew up, the seed would just drop back right where it was, and it would continue to grow again and again. But because it was not being tended, the quality of the wheat became lower and lower and lower, and it ultimately is just a totally inferior and useless quality of wheat. We think about farmers in Virginia and the way that before the Civil War, they would have fields of strawberries, just beautiful fields, and around their houses they would have beautiful rose bushes. But after they returned from the war and they looked at their fields where no one had been there tending them, and the rose bushes, basically all they had was just weeds. They really had no quality left in them. They were just worthless. And even in nature, we learn from things like, we go into the various caverns where they have water trapped underground, and in some cases they'll even have fish. In Mammoth Cave, there are fish in the waters that they have down there, but those fish have no eyes. The cave is so dark, and has been so dark for hundreds of years, that as the fish have been reproducing, and they have not needed eyes because there wasn't light to see, they wound up losing them. In every realm of nature, any talent that an individual may have or any ability that a plant may have, if it is not used, it's withdrawn and it's lost. We think about moles that burrow around underground. They spend so much time underground that they can't see. They've got eyes, but they're useless. They don't do them any good. We think about fish that at one time they had the ability to fly. They had wings in addition to the fins and everything, but they were not using it. And so we call them flying fish, but all they're able to do now is kind of jump out of the water a little bit, and ultimately they splash back down because they can't fly anymore. We look at trees, and sometimes we'll see a tree that something happens to a branch on it, and it is no longer accepting the sap that comes from the trunk of the tree. And that branch just kind of withers and dies. It's gone. The talents, the gifts, the abilities that we have, that we use within our life, are important to us, because if we don't use that talent or ability, then it winds up being neglected, and it just ceases to function for us. If we stop and think about the senses that we have, the 5 senses, we use them, and they continue to exist. But like we said on the fish that are swimming around in underground caverns, or the moles that burrow underground, they lose the ability to see if they don't have a reason to be using that ability. Now, the 5 talents, or the 5 senses that we have, everyone, with very few exception, everyone is given those same abilities, those same opportunities. But we're given those in a fixed amount. I mean, we don't have anyone that has a super hearing ability. We don't have anyone that has the ability to read a newspaper at 500 feet because their eyes are so good. We don't have people that have any type of an ability like that that has a capability that is greater than what you and I have. It's a fixed amount that we're given to use, and we have to use that. Now, if we take and we start using our abilities and we push one way or we push the other, we sometimes wind up affecting our ability to use those talents. As an example, we see some kids, that they spend so much time working out. They're in the weight room and everything like that. They have a great physical ability, but because they don't spend the time necessary in mental development, they wind up being shortchanged in that area. On the other hand, we see some kids that take, and every time you see them, they've got their nose buried in a book. They're studying, they're learning, they're trying to grow, and yet they have neglected those physical abilities. And sometimes they're, it's to the point that they almost can't pick up a sack of groceries because they don't have that physical capability. Darwin had a theory that he described talking about abnormal development, and the way that we would take and twist around the abilities that we have. And it would actually cause, this would be the situation where we would cause a child that's working on physical growth, the muscle growth and everything, and they lose their mental capabilities, or the other way around. And he says, this is something that we have a control over, and we need to make sure that we are using all of our capabilities so that we can continue our growth. The way that he described it is that we have our eyes to see with. And so each time that we look at a picture, or we look at a scene of nature that God has prepared for us, or we take and we read a passage in a book, and it, be something that helps to expand our mental capability. Or we listen to someone presenting a speech, not my lesson here this evening, but somebody that really knows what they're talking about, and they present a speech. We can take those things and actually help ourselves to grow. It becomes a mirror that we look in and we see, where am I right now? And how can I get from here to a better situation? And so we take and we are making a positive change rather than going into abnormal development, where we take all of this wonderful that we see in front of us and ignore it. It's important for us to remember that there is this law in nature of neglect and loss. And this is unchangeable within the physical world. Anytime that we see someone, as an example, we see people that maybe they've had an accident, they've got some broken bones, and they've got their leg in a cast. And for a period of time, especially if it is a major break, a severe break, they spend so long a period of time in that cast that when they do have it taken off, they've got to relearn some of the capabilities that they had before. They hadn't used it, so they were losing it. It's important for us to think about that and understand that God makes this same type of law apply in our spiritual sense. We've got to continue our study and continue our growth in our understanding of what God wants us to do. And if we cease to study, then we're going to lose what knowledge we have gained and what wisdom we have gained. We've seen people that, they have had a great capability, but then they cease using it, and all of a sudden their wisdom just seems to fizzle out and is gone, and they just start making stupid mistakes. And that happens to all of us. And so we've got to realize that here, as we continue to look at what is in front of us, we've got to make sure that we are not neglecting the abilities that we have and use all of those abilities in a way that is going to help us to grow. Part of the tragedy, the greatest tragedy that we have in earth, is when we realize that we had something and we stopped using it and we lost it. I know for myself, there is a lot about computers and electronics that I used to know. I don't know as much as I used to because I haven't been in the workforce using that. I still have some pretty good ideas, but it doesn't always apply anymore. So we've got to take and realize that what is in front of us, we've got to use it. I want to give you 4 examples from Scripture that help us to realize the importance of continuing to persevere in our using of the abilities that God has given us. The first one is Abel. Think about this. Abel, what have you got there to use? I don't have anything but a small lamb, oh God, that I took from the flock. I propose offering it to you, a willing sacrifice. He did so. And the sweet smell of the burning has filled the air ever since. And constantly going up to God as a perpetual sacrifice of praise. We think about the way that Abel took what God had given him and used it to honor God. What about Moses? What have you got in your hand, Moses? I've just got a staff, and I use it for tending my flocks. God says, take it and use it for me. And he did. And standing before Pharaoh in Egypt, he was able to produce so many great and wonderful signs to show the power of God over nature. And so he used that in service. And as we read the scriptures and we read about those events, it stands up as a very strong message for us even today. Mary, what have you got in your hand? I don't have anything but this small pot of sweet-smelling ointment. But I want to use it to anoint the head of your son, Jesus. She did so. And even today, as we read the account of this, the way that she was willing to give to honor him, it still stands as a memorial for her and will stand throughout the continued existence of this world. Another example, a poor woman, what have you got in your hand? I've only got 2 mites. They're not very much, but they're all that I've got. I want to give them to you, God. I want to put them in the treasury. She did. And the story of her generosity gives us an example on through to today and will continue. Talents, abilities, opportunities, whatever you want to call them, it's still the same thing. It's an opportunity to be used, not neglected. We think about the account that we were reading of the talents. 2 of the 3 there did a wonderful job with what they had. But look what happened to the one that was left. And look what could happen to us if we fail to use the gifts that God has given us. There's one more I want you to think about. Because as we're looking at many of the things that we've been talking about, some of it's been very extensive or very expensive. But there's things that can be done on just a daily basis. Dorcas, what have you got in your hand? Only a needle? Just a needle. Take it and use it for me. And as we read about the pain and anguish that those around her experienced when she passed, because she had given so much of her ability to help others by making clothes and giving to those who needed them. If you want to talk about influence, maybe Dorcas is one that we should consider. It's not really as common today as it used to be. But so many places used to have Dorcas societies where women would gather together and take their time and take their needles and make things to give to those who needed. It's not much. Just a little bit of time and effort and a needle. But it was an opportunity, and Dorcas used it. Think about the opportunities that you face each day. Think about the abilities that you have and what you can do to serve God. The ways that He is there for us. He's done so much for us. What have we done for Him? Are we using our talents, using our abilities, or are we neglecting them and watching them just wither away? Think about it this evening. If there's something that you have the ability to do and you haven't been doing it, and you know that you need to take and turn that around where you are serving God with the ability that God gave you, but you need help to accomplish that. You've got friends here, you've got brothers and sisters that want to be there to help you, just as they would want you to help them if they were having problems. We're all together. We're all part of a team. We're all serving God, hopefully, prayerfully, to the best of our abilities. If you need some help with your abilities this evening, let us know what we can do to help you as together we stand and sing.